Why you get shaky, dizzy, or hangry? You're fine, then 20 minutes later, you're shaky and irritable and maybe a little dizzy. You snap at someone over nothing. You need food right now, not in 10 minutes. You call it hangry. You blame low blood sugar. You eat something, you feel better, and you move on. But here's the question nobody's asked you. Why does your blood sugar swing that hard in the first place? That's not normal hunger. That's your insulin overcorrecting, and it's one of the earliest, most ignored signs of insulin resistance. If this sounds like you, I want you to take my free 1-minute insulin resistance quiz. The link is in the description below. 10 questions and 1 minute. Hi, I'm Dr. Kim, a board-certified naturopathic doctor who helps people uncover hidden insulin resistance. Let's talk about why this happens. When you eat something with carbohydrates or sugar, your blood glucose rises and your pancreas releases insulin to bring it back down. In a healthy, insulin-sensitive body, that's a smooth, gradual process. But if you're insulin resistant, your cells aren't responding well to insulin's signal. So your pancreas compensates by releasing more insulin, sometimes a lot more, to get the same job done. The problem is that surge of insulin doesn't always stop precisely where it should. It can overshoot. Blood sugar rises, insulin floods in to bring the blood sugar down, and it drops too far, too fast. That crash, that's the shakiness. That's the sudden irritability. That's the I need food now urgency. This has a name, reactive hypoglycemia, and it's not really a blood sugar problem. It's an insulin problem underneath. Most people experience this and think one of two things: either I just need to eat more often, or this is just what hunger feels like for me. Neither of these explanations asks the real question. Why is your body overcorrecting so dramatically in the first place? A person with healthy insulin sensitivity doesn't crash like this between meals. Their blood sugar dips gently and levels out. If you're someone who feels like you have to eat every 2 to 3 hours or you fall apart, you feel shaky, foggy, or snappy, that's not just a quirky metabolism. That's a signal. Here's what makes this frustrating. A standard fasting glucose blood test won't catch this at all because you're not fasting when it happens. You're reacting to a meal. You could have a perfectly normal fasting glucose and still be crashing hard 3 times a day. What actually shows this pattern is an oral glucose tolerance test with insulin levels drawn at multiple points. Fasting, then 1 hour, then 2 hours after a glucose drink. Conventional testing often only looks at the glucose numbers at those same points. What I want to see is an insulin, or what an insulin is doing at each one, because the glucose numbers alone don't tell the whole story. Let me walk you through what this can actually look like. Say your fasting glucose comes in at 88, completely normal. At the 1 hour mark, glucose rises to 165. That's higher than we'd like to see, but still not flagged as abnormal on most standard interpretations. By 2 hours, glucose has dropped to 70, lower than where you started. Now, look at insulin over the same window. Fasting insulin might be 12, already elevated. At 1 hour, it spikes to 90 or higher because the pancreas is working hard to bring that glucose spike down. And by 2 hours, insulin is still elevated, even as glucose has crashed below baseline. That mismatch, glucose crashing while insulin is still high, is exactly what produces the shakiness, the fog, and the urgency to eat. Without the insulin numbers, all you'd see is a slightly high 1 hour glucose and a low 2 hour glucose. Nothing that would raise a flag. With the additional insulin numbers, the picture becomes obvious. I'd also want to see a fasting insulin and a HOMA-IR calculation. On their own, the same markers we've talked about before. A fasting insulin above 8 through 10, even with completely normal glucose, is often present in people with this exact symptom pattern. It's frequently the earliest number to move, long before glucose does. None of this is on a standard blood panel. The insulin draws during a glucose tolerance test have to be specifically requested, and most providers won't order them unless you ask. I want to tell you about a pattern I've seen over and over in my practice because it might sound like your own story. A woman comes in telling me she can't get more than 2 or 3 hours without eating. She can't go more than 2 or 3 hours without eating. Or she starts shaking, gets irritable, and can't think clearly. She's already changed her habits around it. She carries snacks everywhere. She never skips a meal. She's built her whole day and life around avoiding the crash. Her doctor ran a fasting glucose and it came back at 91, normal. She was told there was nothing to worry about, but she still felt like her body was working against her. So we ran the labs to get a fuller picture, fasting insulin and an insulin-inclusive glucose tolerance test. Her fasting insulin came back at 14. Her 1 hour insulin was over 100. That's not a body managing blood sugar calmly. That's a pancreas working in overdrive, meal after meal, day after day. When she saw those numbers, her first reaction wasn't surprise, it was relief. She said, I knew something was going on, I just didn't have proof. That's the piece I want you to hear. If this has been your experience, you're not imagining it, and you're not just someone who needs to eat more. There's very likely a real, measurable reason your body reacts this way, and it's worth finding out what it is. If you recognize this, the crashes, the hangry spells, the I need food immediately urgency, take the quiz. The link is in the description below. Your answers will help you to understand your symptoms even before any labs are drawn. These crashes aren't just uncomfortable in the moment. Each time your pancreas overshoots on insulin, it's a sign it's working harder than it should. Over months and years, that repeated overproduction of insulin by the pancreas is part of what drives insulin resistance further. It can become a cycle that reinforces itself. And because the fix people usually reach for is eat something sugary or fast digesting to feel better fast, and that quick fix often feeds the same cycle that caused the crash in the first place. Okay, Dr. Kim, now what do I do? Is what people ask me once they understand the physiology. First, pay attention to timing. If you crash reliably 1 to 2 hours after eating, that's useful information to bring to a practitioner. Write down when it happens and what you ate beforehand. Second, look what's in the meal before the crash. Meals that are mostly fast digesting carbohydrates with little protein, fat, or fiber tend to produce sharper insulin spikes and sharper crashes afterward. Pairing carbs with protein and fat slows that spike down. Third, ask for the right testing of fasting insulin, fasting blood sugar, and then the calculation on your own of HOMA-IR is a start. If your practitioner is willing, an insulin-inclusive glucose tolerance test that gives the clearest picture of what's happening after meals specifically. Fourth, take the 1-minute quiz. Enter your email and the quiz is immediately available. Hangry isn't a personality trait. It's not just needing food. For a lot of people, it's the earliest signal that their body is giving them that insulin is working overtime years before any lab flags a problem. You deserve to understand what your body is actually telling you, not just manage the symptom every 2 hours. Go take the quiz in the description below this video and then email me your score. Tell me your biggest struggle. I read everyone personally. I'm Dr. Kim. Know your numbers, change your future. I'll see you in the next video.